Hi, my name is Anant and I welcome you to my YouTube channel 22 Yards. If you like the content of this video, do not forget to press the subscribe button. Today I am going to talk to you about one of the most iconic players for India and for the world of cricket. I'm talking about Sunil Gavaskar. Sunil Gavaskar was Mr. Cricket for India in the late 70s and for the most part in the 80s. He was one of the greatest openers to have played the game. He was one of the best batsmen to have ever played the game. He scored 10,000 runs, 34 hundreds, and faced West Indian, Pakistani and English fast bowlers with great aplomb. But I am today going to talk to you about some of the outstanding memories that I have of this very great batsman. For the most part, the opposition knew that they had to go past Gavaskar to beat India. Only for a brief period in 1982-83, he was put into the shade by Virender displays against Pakistan and West Indies. Otherwise, he was always the opposition. He was always the wicket that the opposition wanted the most. I can keep raving about Gavaskar and his incredible contribution to the Indian cricket, but I will run out of time. So I will talk to you about some of the most outstanding memories I have of this great player. The first memory I have is of his textbook technique, but more than anything else, the way he played the short ball. As you are all aware, that short ball has been the bane of many an Indian batsman, but not for Gavaskar. His method against the short ball looked simple, but was incredibly or insanely courageous. He would judge the line and length of the ball like many a great batsman very early. And then he would let the short ball, and if the ball was short, he would let it come to him. And at the last moment, it seemed he would gently sway backwards and let the ball go so close to his eyes and his nose that he could probably have smelled the leather, and then he would watch it carefully go into the hands of the wicket keeper. This is the short ball leave on which you can really call the Gavaskar leave, on which the Bombay school of batting is edificed. Maybe he picked up this leave from the great Vijay Merchant or the great Vijay Hazare, who had represented India with great distinction and were great players. Or perhaps he picked it up from an international player. Later on, this technique was beautifully emulated by the great Sachin Tendulkar in all his battles against fast bowling. That Gavaskar was able to do it without a helmet on his head. And later on in his career, with just the very thin protection of a skull cap, is in itself incredibly courageous. Later on in his career, when he had become more adept at playing one-day cricket, and if the short ball was pitched outside the off stump, he would beautifully glide it to the third man. So Gavaskar against the short ball was one of the sights of cricket. He knew he was 5'5" tall. He had decided to eschew the risk of playing a hook or a pull shot because it would be difficult for him to control the ball. So therefore, he developed a picture-perfect technique which served him very well against the world's best fast bowlers. The only time he was hit by a bowler was by Malcolm Marshall in West Indies in 1983, when he was hit flush on the forehead. But he got up, placed faith in his technique again, and went on to score 149 not out in a series which was average or mediocre by his standards. The second thing I would like to bring to fore is that unlike many current players of today, Gavaskar had a sense of history and a sense of occasion. I remember that the Delhi Test match in 1983 at the Firozshah Kotla ground. Gavaskar had got a beautiful century, the fastest of his career. He had scored 100 of 94 balls and in the process equaled Don Bradman's 2900 record. This was a great achievement by an Indian, and the press and the players and everyone around the world was euphoric. But Gavaskar kept his poise. He knew that it was his 95th test match and he had taken 95 test matches to get to this milestone. And the man he had surpassed, Donald Bradman, had achieved this feat in a mere 52 test matches. Bradman, for the uninitiated, averaged 99.4, scored 6,996 runs in 52 test matches in a career in which his peak years, or 8 years that he would have been at his peak, were lost to the World War II. So Gavaskar realized immediately that it was just a personal milestone for him. It was not like he had gone ahead of Don Bradman, and he stated so with great calm and great poise. In the same series, batting in Madras, he again scored a brilliant 236, which put him past Bradman, and that was his 30th 100. It was his 99th Test match. And again, Gavaskar realized that it was not for him to be euphoric or to show bravado that he had gone past Bradman. He remained phlegmatic but very proud of this great achievement. The third was in his final series against Pakistan. It was the Ahmedabad Test, and Gavaskar scored his 10,000th run. The interesting thing is that sometimes Gavaskar would later in his years shun the crowd as they invaded the field, as was common in those days. But that day he let the crowd embrace him, garland him, and look very happy. He understood that all the batting records that he had in his name when he was playing, whether it be the 3400s that he had scored or the mountain of runs that he had piled up, would one day be passed by another batsman who would play the game. But what would always remain, and he said so, was that he would be the first one to score the 10,000 runs. He knew that that fact would remain unchanged for as long as the game would be played. So there again, Gavaskar showed his sense of occasion. The fourth was that Gavaskar actually belonged to the Vijay Merchant school. Vijay Merchant was a great Indian Test opener, just like Gavaskar. And he said that one should retire when people ask why and not why not. Gavaskar played one of his greatest Test innings in Bangalore in a losing cause. It was a treacherous, brutal pitch where the ball spun a yard and he scored a 96 out of 2, chasing the Pakistani score of 216 in the final innings. It was truly one of the greatest innings against spin and the pace of Imran Khan and the left arm wicket bowling of Wasim Akram. As long as he was batting, India's hopes remained alive. When he was dismissed, as many times earlier, Indian hopes died and we lost the Test match. Little did we know that this would be the last time we would see the great Gavaskar in a Test match. Later on in the year, there was a match played in Lords where MCC played the rest of the World 11. Gavaskar actually opened for the rest of the World 11 against a pace attack as good as any that the world has seen. The opposition had Richard Hadley, Malcolm Marshall and Clive Rice. The first two of them could be 1 and 2 of fast bowling ever. MCC had batted first and Gavaskar opened the innings for rest of the world. They were in trouble. Gavaskar scored 80 not out by the evening and then went to the pavilion and quietly announced his retirement. He said he always knew that the Bangalore Test was his last Test match, but he had not announced his retirement because he thought he would not be picked for the rest of the World 11. Next day, he went on to score a flawless 188. This was one of his greatest innings against great bowling attack. He was eventually dismissed by Ravi Shastri, and then Gavaskar slowly rode into the sunset. It is interesting to note that Gavaskar had actually never scored 100 at Lords till that final innings that he played at the MCC. He still never scored a Test 100 at Lords. This is something which is comparable to Sachin Tendulkar, who got a mountain of hundreds. In fact, he got 51 Test hundreds, but actually never scored 100 at Lords. Tendulkar, also like Gavaskar, played a match against the MCC for rest of the world. It was a one-day game and he had scored 100 against Glenn McGrath and Alan Donald. Some of these patterns are very interesting and how they repeat themselves over a period of time. Gavaskar later on became the voice of Indian cricket and has remained the most influential voices in Indian game. Sometimes, and with some justification, Gavaskar has been accused of being a little mean and also been slanted towards the players from Bombay. But this should not subtract from his greatness. He was truly an Indian hero. This is Anand Gupta signing off for 22 Yards.